I'm Susi Hamilton, and with me on the couch is Dr. Simon Restubog. He's from the Australian School of Business at UNSW. Simon, you work in a very interesting area. You look at the dark side of organisations and organisational behaviour. I think that includes bullying. Can you tell me exactly what you mean by the dark side?
Well, the dark side actually focuses primarily on the bad behaviors, exemplified by employees and their supervisors in the workplace. It may cover, topics such as bullying, which can either be lateral, between two co-workers. It can also be about abusive supervision, where you have a supervisor who's actually undermining a subordinate. It can also be about revenge, aiming to hurt or threaten the well-being of another employee. So it can cover all these different constructs and behaviors.
How commonplace is it? I mean, we hear a lot in the media about bullying. Is it just that we have a heightened awareness about it, or is it commonplace?
I think, I would probably draw your attention to a survey that's been conducted by the Australian Council of Trade Unions back in 2000, in which they found that nearly 70% of employees had been mistreated by their supervisors. So it's pretty common.
So was the idea that you wanted to make a difference and actually impact organisations and try to improve that?
Well, apart from making a difference, I want to help organizations curb out these behaviors, that these behaviors actually threaten the well-being not only of the employees, and also the productivity of the organization itself. So by doing this research, it would allow companies and organizations to establish some mechanisms to actually minimize these behaviors.
Let's talk about some of the specifics of the papers that you've written. One is on anger displacement, I believe.
Yes.
What is that, and what did you find?
So the title of the paper is actually very interesting because I titled it as When Distress Hits Home. So that is basically the title of the paper. Anger displacement is a mechanism in which a person tries to redirect his or her anger to an alternative source. So, for example, if I am a subordinate and I have actually been scolded by my supervisor, I cannot direct my anger to the source of my frustration because I am likely to expect that there are ramifications if I do that. So what happens is that I, as the person who's actually experienced being abused or being scolded at, is more likely to redirect my anger onto another innocent party. So, for example, a coworker, or say a family member, or for example, my partner. So that illustrates the concept of anger displacement.
How commonplace is that?
I think you see this even in the popular press. Last year I was reading this newspaper and I saw this cartoon strip, which illustrates this concept specifically, where a boss scolded the subordinate got home, got frustrated towards the wife got frustrated also and scolded the son, and the son kicked the dog. So that clearly illustrates, of course in a humorous fashion, the notion of anger displacement.
There's been a whole lot of awareness about bullying, as we've said. Why do people do it? Is it because they just don't know how to manage themselves in a different fashion? Is it as simple as that?
In the organizational literature, there are basically two common explanations why bullying or abusive supervision actually happens or occurs. One explanation takes from the perspective of justice. If I am a supervisor, for example, and I have been mistreated by my own supervisor, I am more likely to displace my aggression or frustration to another person. And usually the victim is the subordinate. Okay, so that is a situational explanation to why abusive supervision or bullying occurs. Another explanation is from the perspective of personality. Some people are prone to anger, some people are more likely to feel frustrated, some people are more likely to experience negative emotional states. That's why they tend to be, aggressive towards others.
So I know that you said earlier that part of your work, you feed it to organisations, and the idea is that they need to provide leadership. Do they need to target certain people in organisations, or does it need to be across the board?
I don't think, supervisors will volunteer to attend a leadership training if they actually frame it as, making sure that they're not abusive towards their subordinates. So the approach that I usually suggest to organizations is making it across the board, that everyone who takes a supervisory role in terms of supervising others should make sure that these people are given the strategies and the practical skills in order for them to manage their employees very well. And that includes treating them with respect, treating them with dignity.
But what do you do when you're in an organisation and somebody is being a bully? How do you personally navigate a situation like that?
Well, the first step to do is to actually acknowledge that bullying is occurring. Okay, and to make sure that that person is aware that he or she is being bullied. That's the first step. The second step is to allow that person to actually speak out, and especially for the victim, about how he or she feels about the situation. And the next step would be not directly to confront the bully. Well, some people do confront them, but it may actually lead to more negative ramifications. At times what happens is that the situation gets to be more aggravated. So what I usually suggest is that if the organization has mechanisms or grievance procedures, then that is the way to go, to actually write it up and elevate the concern to the immediate manager or to the HR person.
Simon, thank you so much.
No worries.